At this time, I'll call the Budget and Purchasing Committee to order and ask Ashley to call roll, please.
Kirby? Here. Lewis? Here. Mitchell?
Here.
Moon? Here. Samples?
Okay, at this time, I'll ask for roll call. For emergency announcement, please.
Before we get started, let me read the emergency evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency evacuation, an alarm will sound. Everyone should exit the building by way of the nearest stairwell in a safe and effective manner. If the nearest stairwell is blocked by smoke, use the other stairwell. Do not use the elevator. Once you have reached the main floor, follow the exit signs to exit the building and quickly proceed away from the building. Please be mindful of others evacuating and of emergency vehicles.
Now I'll ask if there's any public input on items on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll go to purchasing. Review the sole source purchases. This is for information only. D1, D2 is resolution for surplus items. Teresa, are you going to present that, or is Randy going to present it? You going to present it? Okay.
Some personal property surplus items. Would like to ask that those be forwarded on for approval to sell by internet auction. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you.
Do I have a motion? Motion and a second. Any discussion? Any questions? I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon? Yes. Samples?
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, D3 is awarded bids. This is for information only. You have a copy of the minutes in your packet. These need approval. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Okay, I have a motion and a second. And any discussion? Okay, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Declare the motion passed. F, financing, increases and transfers. Next, we have the finance portion of the agenda. F1 transfers, F1A victim assistance, $41,835 to correct the amount. Randy?
You're going to have kind of a recurring theme on some of these things. As you know, we just probably completed our closing of the books, and we've passed those files on to the auditors. In the course of doing some of that work in preparation for them doing their field work, we've come across a number of items where we're going to have to correct some things that were recorded in inappropriate accounts, and we're moving those things. This would be something similar in nature. We're actually no additional money. It's just the contribution. This activity was recorded in the wrong account, and this is correcting that.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Can I ask for any discussion?
Mr. Vineyard, we did make a distribution to Haven House and New Hope Child Advocacy. I think in the upper $30,000 range, correct?
That is correct.
So.
And that would have reflected the activity as we had it as of June 30, last fiscal year.
Okay.
June 30, 13.
How are they proceeding with the disbursements in the future?
My conversations with the clerk is that we have those on our radar to do on a quarterly basis.
Any other discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon?
Yes.
Samples?
Motion passes. F1B, Judicial Commissioners, $259,244 to the new account. Randy?
This is, in the state chart of accounts, there is a separate account in which the judicial commissioner's activity should be recorded in. It has been, up until this moment, accounted for as part of the circuit court clerk's account. And we need to put this in the judicial commissioner's account as outlined in the state chart of accounts. That's all this does, is move all of that activity out of the circuit court clerk budget into the judicial commissioner's account.
I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ashley, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon?
Yes.
Samples? Yes. The motion passed.
F1C, Clerk and Master, $2,462 to clerical personnel. Randy, is that, are you speaking on that?
This is kind of this is a budget item where we treated an activity last fiscal year and we did not include it in the current year budget. Is that correct? So this now amends the current budget to reflect, I think we shorted the salary account if I remember correctly. Is that right? So we shorted the salary account, no additional people or anything, but when we adjusted the budget for 2013, it fell through the cracks. We did not adjust it for 2014. But it's actually paid for from state money, if I remember the entry we brought to you for last year's budget. This is one of those where they get, the staff that works there gets paid in part by the state. So there's been no change in the staff. They didn't make us aware that they were getting additional funding from the state. So we didn't have the salary in there to match the money they were getting in to pay for it.
Have a motion, do I have a second? Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Ashley, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon?
Yes.
Samples? The motion passed.
F1D, accounting, $32,109 to personnel lines. Randy?
We've already had a little bit of transition in my department, and we're about to experience some more transition. I've got one employee that'll be retiring in December. I've been given written notice of another employee who will be leaving next September 1 or before, but no later than that. And then I've got 2 more potential retirements that are coming up prior to that. So I'm looking at considerable upheaval on staff. What I'm asking for here is that we transfer money from the development department to my department so that I can bring some people on staff and have a transition period for these positions, and we don't get hit cold turkey for them. So this allows me to plan for that transition rather than just get hit with it.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
You're saying that the source is coming out of development?
Yes.
Development being stormwater, building codes?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon?
Yes.
Samples? The motion passed.
Item F1E, soil conservation, $750 to communications. Randy?
This is another one of those accounts that we had this one fall through the crack, $750 that was submitted to us. We failed to get it in the 2014 budget for $750 for soil conservation.
Do I have a motion? Second? Okay.
So this is a budget increase, these are all money.
It is, it's technically a transfer because we're not increasing the bottom line of the general fund. We're taking it from another department and putting it in this department.
This is just to keep the phones working.
The soil conservation is partially funded by us, partially funded by the state. And
So soil conservation is not on the county system?
part of their budget is funded by the county and another part of it is funded by the state.
I'm talking about the actual phone system, they're not on the county system.
But they pay their own phone
Yeah,
bill.
they have to pay their own freight.
Any other discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon?
Yes.
Samples? Motion passed.
F1F, this is the schools, various transfers between accounts. Troy?
You on a roll? This is a transfer to simply balance the final commission adopted budget of 81 million with the final Board of Ed adjusted approved budget to get in line with that $81 million. So from the original budget that we submitted, this transfer gets that in line with the final approved budget of 81 million.
Have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay. Any discussion?
Excuse me, sorry. Troy had been helpful if we had had a comparative previous year. Can you tell me what operation of plant 72,610, 72,620 were last year?
Can I tell you what the budget was last year?
Correct. Budgeted amount for 72,610, 72,620.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moon, I can't. I don't have those numbers with me. I just have the transfer document that I submitted for your.
If you would, for tomorrow night's meeting, if you could have that available for us.
You want the,
I'd like to see the comparatives of all the items
you want the 12-13 budget from last year?
alongside of the 13-14 budget, if that would be possible.
Just add another column onto here. Should do it.
Put it right in there beside the 13-14 adopted, the blue. Okay. How do you want me to get that to you before tomorrow? Okay. It may take me a little time to copy those numbers in and make sure I got it all lined up. So send it to Rhonda. All right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm just gonna pull one line item out here to ask about. Line 116, under 71,100 for teachers. The adopted budget was 22,300,000, and now the amended budget 26,508,000. So where did you guys come up with $4.2 million?
Well, that's a little, it's a lot misleading. When the adopted budget was a total of 81 million. What we had originally requested, I don't remember the total number, it was 86 million, something like that. In order for the budget that you all get to adopt and be balanced at 81 million, I said to just take that complete difference of $4 or $5 million out of that teacher line, so that the total is 81 million, knowing that once your budget was adopted and approved, I'd have to go back to the board, and all of this budget would have to be amended to get in line with the full 81 million. So,
So where did the 4.2 come from?
the total budget is still 81 million. The original request was well above the 26 million. I'm not explaining that very well. The original budget that we requested was 86 million. In order to submit an $81 million budget from the Budget Committee to the full commission, you only approved 81 million. We cut all 4 million of that, or 5 million of that, out of that one line, because I didn't know where the board would want to make all those cuts until we went back to the board meeting after you adopted the budget. We just took the whole cut out of that one line item, knowing that we had to come back and fix that. And we've done that probably for 13 years, as long as I've been here. It's been done the same way every year.
I don't ever recall that big a chunk.
That's how, Susan can attest to that. We've done it that way every year, and it's been, there've been big numbers there every year.
That has been our typical practice over the years. I think really, like you said, because of the timing
Yeah.
of when the cuts are made and the board makes their decision on that.
But, go ahead, Mr. Lewis, you want to ask.
Troy, is that a cut? Because it looks like it's an increase.
Remember what I said. I said we took the complete $5 million that we cut, that we were going to cut, and cut it out of that one line item. But that's not where the actual board cuts are coming from. They cut in the teacher line. We lost some teachers in that position, but they cut throughout the budget. So that's why this number's going back up, but there's everything else throughout pretty much is going down.
So all the negative numbers in that column, do they reflect the difference between 81 and 86?
If you exclude the positive number, yes.
If you exclude the 4.5?
Yeah. I think that
So
should
the
work.
4.5 is still an increase.
From what we had to do to get it to balance, yes. But we're not increasing what we did from last year.
To come up with that 4.2 million, you went throughout your budget and made cuts throughout the budget in different line items and pulled that money from those line items and put it into teacher salary, correct?
Yes, because when we, just to get the budget balanced for you to send, for what the budget committee sent to the full commission, I took the entire cut out of that one line item, which is not real. So what this does is it puts a lot of that back in there and makes all the other cuts that the board finally made to get in line with the total $81 million budget throughout the rest of the budget. So that's one of those negatives throughout the rest of the budget. The total is still 81 million at the end of this.
And the 12-13 budget for teachers, do you have these figures for?
Again, I don't have, that when I give you that tomorrow, I'll put that in, that'll be in there, but I don't have it with me.
And I guess the only other substantial cut in is $898,000 that we're not going to get textbooks.
That's correct.
How much of the 4.5 reflects salary increases? Or the step raises?
Yeah, right now, first of all, for non-certified, non-teachers, classified positions, there are no raises whatsoever, no increases in pay for those employees in this budget. In fact, for 435 TAs, we actually cut their pay by 13 days. So they lost pay, 435 TAs. For certified employees, what the board approved after you all adopted the budget was a payment of a state supplement, one-time supplement of $300,000, which we are required to pass along in compensation for teachers, because that is the exact amount of money that the state is giving us as an increase in our BP, and they've told us that. So the board approved that, paying that amount of money out as a state supplement, pending collaborative conferencing, which is the new legislation that superseded the old negotiations, interest-based bargaining with the Blount County Education Association. So we have gone back to collaborative conferencing, and I just came from a meeting there before here, and we still have not come to an agreement, and thus have not taken anything back to the Board of Education for final approval. So I can't tell you what, so far to this point, we have not paid any teacher, any certified position, any differently than what they were paid last year. They're getting the same amount of pay. Now, until we come to an agreement with the collaborative conferencing process and go back to the board and get them to approve that, I can't do anything with that. So there will be some increased amount in compensation for teachers. I don't know exactly what that looks like until we finish that process. It may, yes. From my perspective, in total, it won't change, the 81 million, but likely the salary line items for the teachers, that there are a dozen or so throughout this budget, may have to change. I may have to come back and do a transfer between funds to get those in line with what's finally approved for teacher compensation.
Troy, last year, that line item was $26,874. This year, you've got $26,508, so it's actually went down.
Okay. Thank you.
$26 million.
I mean, well, never mind. Go ahead. Does that answer your question? Who answered that? Okay.
Is there any more discussion? More questions?
Teachers, no raises, is what you said, correct? No raises for teachers.
No, that's not exactly what I said. What I said was that the state has given us $300,000, $303,500 to be exact, through the BEP, and they have said you must pass that along in some form of compensation, whether we do that with a step or a bonus or some other way. We're in the process of negotiating that because we're required to do that by law with the BCEA. I shouldn't say negotiate. Collaborative conferencing is the right term. And we have met several times since the board approved the budget. We have not come to an agreement. And once we come to an agreement, we have to then take that back to the board, and they may or may not approve that. So if there will be some raise for all or some teachers with that $303,000 or some amount that's negotiated.
But TAs were cut. There were cuts made in TA salaries.
That we eliminated 50 TA positions altogether completely and cut 400, the rest of the TAs that were left, 435 minus 50, I'm sorry, 380 TAs, we cut their pay from a 190-day contract to a 177-day contract. So they lost 13 days' pay.
That was to be able to keep more TAs on the system, wasn't it?
Certainly that's one way of, yes, looking at it, yes.
Okay.
But principals received $46,000 increase in compensation as a group, counting 900, assistant principals 74,000, secretaries 28,000, and we're cutting TAs.
Those are decreases.
Amended budget, I'm sorry, excuse me. That's where the cuts were made.
Yes.
That's why I would like to see on the executive summary, the front page, the line of cuts.
I mean, and let me reiterate, the board cut a total of 84 positions, eliminated. And they're not here today. There was somebody in those positions last year. They're not here today. Now, 25 of those, 24, 25, were teaching positions.
Okay.
One of those was an assistant principal, by the way. And the others were classified positions, mostly TAs.
Again, can we see the comparison between the two budget years?
Sure. Yeah, I can plug that in. It's not a problem.
Troy, on the $300,000 supplement from the state,
Yes.
is that a guaranteed annual amount, or does the amount change, or does the fact that they may or may not give it change, or?
They have built that into the BEP funding formula. So unless something unusual or extraordinary happens, that will stay in the BEP funding formula next year. Now, that doesn't mean that Blount County Schools will earn the same amount through the BEP funding formula, because there's a lot of components that go into that. You know, we could, that amount could still be in the funding formula. We could still get the same or less BEP funding.
Okay, and the reason I ask is if we take that and then make it part of a pay increase.
Yes.
We're obligated to the pay increase every year, whereas the 300,000 may not be 300,000 every year. Is that accurate?
Well, we're pretty certain that that will flow back through to us in the future years.
Okay.
Unless we get a significant decrease in other factors such as student enrollment that drives our funding formula down. And for 1 year, you go into stability and you get the same amount as you got the year before. I know that's complicated, but.
And did you say the board was considering using that money either as pay increases or bonuses or one-time supplements, or?
Yeah, they have initially approved it as I termed it a state supplement, a one-time. A bonus is one way of looking at it, same thing. Pending collaborative conferencing, and they understand that when we go back and collaborate with the BCA, there may be a different agreement or a different way to come to that and take that back to the board and say, would you consider doing this? And maybe it is adding it as a recurring salary increase. Then it's up to the board to do whatever they choose to do. They have the final approval of that.
Okay. Well, we certainly obligate ourselves for future years if we do it in the form of a pay increase.
And that's part of the crux of the
Yeah.
debate right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you actually take the 303, and you see, do they divide that equally among how many teachers?
Well, that's part of the debate, but one option is taking, I think there are 828 certified positions that would affect. So you could take 303,000 divided by 828, and I think you get 367 each. You could pay it out that way. But the state has given flexibility in how you spend that. I mean, it sounds odd, but we could take 303,000 and give it to our top 10 teachers. They don't care how you do it. You just have to pay it out in compensation. You could do it by by year of service, maybe. Say if you've got 0 to 5 years, you get this amount, and 6 to 10, you get this. You could make it a little bit different based on years of experience. We've not looked at that yet.
Any more questions or discussion?
I just have a question. We need to approve this tonight before we have all the information from us.
I just want to see the historical comparison last fiscal year with what's
Necessary to approve it tonight.
My only concern is, we didn't meet last month, and ideally this would have come to you last month. There will reach a point maybe where we have to start moving some money around, and I'd like to see it set where it needs to be so that we don't have to make any more amendments.
That's a really good point. I mean, we didn't meet last month, and we're going to be to a point that there are a few accounts that if this doesn't get approved, then I'm going to have some issues in some accounts. But I got to emphasize that this, again, it's 81 million. There's no increase here.
Well, we can move it either way, whether it's with or without recommendation, and Troy will have the information to go in the packet tomorrow, so that'll get it on.
Once he gets it to me tomorrow, I'll just forward it on to you all, and then I'll send it on so it can get in the packet tomorrow night as well.
But go ahead and pass it on. Pass it.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, we can move it without a recommendation.
Well, I'm good with it.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, I guess we're ready for a roll call vote.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon?
Yes.
Samples?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Now we move into increases, decreases. If approved, these items will go on to the commission for approval. F2A, Circuit Court Fund 101, the $28,925 for data processing. Randy?
This is actually one of those items that, because we didn't meet last month, it's one of the few we've had. Last fiscal year, you approved a recommendation that was brought to you by the circuit court clerk for his new computer system that we've been reading about the implementation. We approved that at $71,000 and change. Then at the end of the fiscal year, the project was not complete. We brought back to you the reappropriation or the reauthorization of that project. All of this is funded out of the reserve that they have set aside for technology. That's a fee that's collected on every court case that they consider. Now we found ourselves needing to order some equipment that we weren't aware of initially in order to make get the implementation on time. We're coming back to you and clearing all that up and asking you to appropriate $29,000, $28,925 out of their data processing reserve fund, and it's for the equipment and the maintenance agreement. I asked them to go ahead and I approved them proceeding with ordering the equipment so they would have it ready for the new system to come up this week. Do we have that in the fund balance? We don't, I don't think, because it's a reservation of fund balance. Is that right? No, no.
You found it, yeah.
No, they will still have money left in that reserve.
Move we approve, send it on.
Yeah. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon? Yes. Samples? Yes. The motion passed.
F2B, Civil Defense Fund, 101, $5,800 decrease on the use of their fund balance. Okay, got a motion and do I have a second? Any discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon? Yes. Samples? The motion passed.
F2C, Other General Administration Fund, 101, $5,400 office supplies and other charges. Randy?
This is to create a budget in the other administration account for other charges and office supplies, and we're taking it out of travel.
Do you have some other charges in mind?
You know specifically what that was? It's not here. This is for expenses where we've paid the Register of Deeds small amounts of money for, when you compare what we did last year, we had no budget for it for this year for the same type of activities.
Basically, de minimis charges that flow in, you have no other way to catch it. 5,000 is a nice round number. Sometimes contracts get led.
There's like $12, $17, $36, $24, a bunch of those.
I'm convinced, thank you.
Yep.
Move we approve. Do we have a motion on the floor?
Motion, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon?
Yes.
Samples? The motion passed.
Item F2D, Sheriff's Fund 101, $53,449 decrease on salary line.
Previously, this body approved a recommendation from, as a request from the city of Friendsville, where they were going to, we were going to provide police services for them, and they were going to pay the sheriff to do that. We amended the budget for the increase in revenue coming from the city of Friendsville, and then the increased expense was in the sheriff's department. Shortly after commission approved that, the city of Friendsville met, and they decided not to pursue that. And as recently as in this morning's paper, it was reported that they're actually considering their own property tax. So all this does is undo the transaction or reduce the budget by what you increased it 2 months ago.
Have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? I'll ask for roll call vote, please.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon? Yes. Samples? Yes. The motion passed.
Item F2E, Sheriff's Fund 122, $20,000 in forfeitures increase.
This is another one of those issues that arose during the course of our audit, where we were reporting some revenue in the wrong fund, and it needs to be reported into Fund 122, the Drug Control Fund. What we're doing in a number of these things is actually establishing budgets for either the expenditure or recognizing a budget for the revenue. And these are things that, again, that were outcomes from our field, our closing process and our discussions with the auditors. Keeps us from getting an audit finding.
Have a motion, do I have a second? Do I have any other discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon? Yes. Samples? Yes. Motion passed.
Item F2F, Debt Service Fund, Fund 151, $179,691.13, pay off DTF note. Randy?
Currently, the building and property that the Drug Task Force operates out of was financed through a loan that we ran through the Blount County Public Building Authority. So the DTF pays rent, and we in turn take that rent as revenue, and then we in turn make the note payment. So it's not a direct obligation of the Drug Task Force, it's a direct obligation of Blount County. What they have done is their board has approved a motion to pay off the building in the form of advancing us rent payments equal to what the payoff is. And if you approve this, then that revenue will be recognized, that rent will be recognized in the debt service fund, 151, and we in turn will make the appropriate principal and interest payments and pay that note off. And then the Blount County PBA will issue a release turning that property over to Blount County. You need to be aware that the DTF cannot legally own the real estate. The Blount County can as a sponsoring agency, but it would be a restriction on the asset for the DTF, for the Drug Task Force. So we'll have a disclosure issue there to work out on our books. But it'll ultimately reside on our books, but it will have a restriction or commitment for the DTF. And that's in keeping with what Blount County previously approved when all this was set up.
Do I have a motion? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Give me,
What, okay.
are they pulling this $179,691 out of their reserve?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion? I'll now ask for a roll call vote.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon? Yes. Samples? Motion passed.
Move on to item G, discussion for possible action. Number 1A, Sheriff's 2013 JAG local solicitation grant for $17,589. I don't see Jeff here. Randy, do you want to explain that?
This is a grant request, requires no matching funds, and it's to buy some radio and communications equipment and software.
Move we approve.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions?
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I see the deadline was July 9. Can you explain our policy on why these applications come before us?
Our current grant procedures policy specifies that once a department requests a grant application, they submit that to my department, and that in turn comes to this body. It's up to this body then to say yay or nay. However, the full commission, until this body acts in the form of recommending a budget amendment, nothing can be spent until the full commission approves that. If you desire, and because the dates sometimes don't align, if you desire that that policy be amended so that it doesn't look like it's always after the fact, we can amend our policy, bring it back to you, and let you adopt that revised policy, and that's what we'll go by. And I do not know that this is the case on this grant, but I can tell you from my former life, there have always been funding agencies, both at the state level and at the federal government, when they have money that it looks like it's going to expire, they will often call cities and counties and say, I got some money. Randy, do you all have a need? And if you do, send us a grant request.
So this basically is a ratification of this request.
Yes.
Request for amendment.
In effect, yes.
Thank you.
And that may be the part, Randy, that you're talking about amending whatever policy we have now, because it does look like we're coming for approval after we've already applied for the grant.
That's correct.
If that's going to slow the process down, then maybe we need to change that.
Well, rather than making it mandatory, why don't I make it permissive and then bring it back to you and let you adopt that?
Good.
That hurt. Is there any other questions or discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote. Yeah. Yeah, I had a first. But we'll discuss it some more, Steve, if you'd like to. I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Kirby? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon?
Yes.
Samples? The motion passed.
Number 2, resolution authorizing the insurance of a refunding bond. Randy?
Okay. You don't mind, tell John to make sure he brings. Okay, she's up. Hey, Lauren.
Hi.
We've got 2 items on the agenda tonight for your consideration. The first is the proposed bond resolution that I've been discussing with each of you privately. And then the second item is a tax policy resolution that kind of goes hand in hand with this. The Internal Revenue Service, this is on item G3, has been giving a little more scrutiny to a lot of debt issues. And it's been the advice of our bond counsel that we adopt a policy so that you, as the authorizing entity for Blount County, knows that we're only going to finance those things that have a useful life consistent with the means of financing that we're going to propose. So Lauren is here tonight to kind of give you an update on where we're at with the RFP process on the refinancing of the E5A and the E1A bond series that we have with the Public Building Authority. As a backdrop, I presented a resolution on behalf of the county to the Public Building Authority a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now, and that asked them to transfer to Blount County the swaps that are associated with the E5A and the E1A loan agreements that we have with them, and they approved that 6-0. So now that puts us in a position to have direct responsibility for those financial instruments, and now we can have negotiations with the counterparty since we're removing the middleman from that positioning. All that's not final yet, and that's where Lauren comes in tonight to kind of give you an update on where we are with the discussion. You have in your packet kind of a little presentation that she's going to talk from, which should be right behind G2 bond resolution. Lauren?
Is that my cue? And Randy, I just want to make sure, can you all hear me okay? My phone is just a little bit across my desk from my computer.
There's going to be a little delay,
Okay.
so try not to talk too fast.
Well, the good news is that I'm from Tennessee, so I don't have a tendency to talk too fast. Okay, good. So everyone does have the information that I have prepared, and this really just, some of this is repetitive, and you have seen these graphics before, but I think it certainly helps us walk through what the county's existing debt looks like in regards to the E1A bonds and the E5A bonds, and it certainly helps me in trying to explain it and figure out where we're at and where we may go in the future. So on the first page, which actually is page 2, but says current structure, this is what the E1A bonds and the E5A bonds look like, meaning you've got Blount County on the left-hand side as the obligor, and everything flows through the Public Building Authority of Blount County. The Public Building Authority entered into a loan agreement with the county, and it sold variable rate bonds, weekly variable rate bonds to bondholders. It was publicly offered, and in turn entered into synthetic fixed rate swaps with a swap counterparty. In this case, for all the swaps that we discussed, it is Deutsche Bank. And in turn, Deutsche Bank provides the PBA, or the county, if you will, because it flows through the PBA, a variable rate index, and in turn, the county pays a fixed rate to offset that. So the idea is that the squiggly lines that are the variable rate swap rate and the variable rate bond rate that you see coming from Deutsche Bank to the PBA and coming from the PBA to the bondholder should offset one another, leaving the county paying a fixed rate to the swap provider, which is Deutsche Bank. To have this structure in the market requires that you have a remarketing agent, an investment bank that actually remarkets your variable rate bonds to bondholders on a weekly basis, a liquidity provider, which is a bank that is available at any point to buy the bonds out of the market should the bondholders decide they no longer want to hold these bonds. And because of the PBA involvement, meaning you have a conduit, you have PBA associations and PBA fees and the loan administrator of the loans between the PBA and the county. So, we have the dotted box kind of around where the swap is, but I hope this makes sense, that I'm certainly here to answer any questions about what the current structure looks like. But I'll be honest, I can't tell if someone's going to ask a question, so Randy, you may have to help me out.
I think you can go to the next slide.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So what we have been evaluating with Randy and with Bond Counsel is other alternatives. We're happy to report that we've got a lot of great proposals through the RFP process, which correlated to a lot of different options and ideas for the county. The option that we have spent the most time on recently has been a floating rate note program with a direct purchase. And so I want to explain to you on page 3 kind of how that works and some of the pieces that we would propose to evaluate through a refinancing. We have worked with Bond Counsel and with Randy, and he mentioned the PBA meeting earlier, to look at the opportunity of refinancing the bonds and eliminating the PBA's involvement, so it becomes a direct obligation, which it was before, with the county, in which the county can negotiate with providers, loan providers, liquidity providers, swap counterparties, whoever the parties may be, but can negotiate directly with them. So that is one piece that we would look to, and eliminating the PBA's involvement will eliminate some of the ancillary fees. The product that we would look to, that we've spent the most time evaluating, is this floating rate note program, which what you do is you do a refinancing. You take the variable rate bonds out of the market, so they're refunded and paid off, and you enter into a credit agreement with an investment bank or a commercial bank, in which they become your bondholder. So they buy the bonds out of the market, and you have one bondholder that you work with. And it's called a direct purchase, and that's pretty much the term that we refer to it within PFM in the industry. At the time when you enter into the direct purchase, the options that we are looking at, the bank sets a fixed spread over an index. So that is a known fixed spread. The index will move, meaning the variable rate will move in time, but the spread is fixed. And the swaps will remain as is. This option becomes very attractive because it eliminates the need for a remarketing agent, and it also eliminates the concern that your current structure allows for a bondholder to decide tomorrow, next week, whenever, that they no longer want to hold Blount County debt or Blount County PBA debt, and they can put it back to the bank. This particular case doesn't allow for that feature. The bank or the direct purchase provider is committed for the full term of the agreement, and those proposals have come in anywhere from 3 to 7 years to evaluate, which is a similar term for what your liquidity providers would provide. On the previous slide, when you saw, that was one of the components of a variable rate transaction. Any questions on the idea of a floating rate note through a direct purchase at this point?
Move on.
Okay, thank you. So I think that slide 4 gives us the most up-to-date information as to where we are in the process and what we see as the next steps. The county has submitted a plan of refunding to the comptroller's office. We have tentatively, we have not heard that they don't have any follow-up questions. However, we have not received their report. We expect to hear back from them before September 19th. The county will continue, along with PFM and Bond Counsel, to negotiate the terms of the direct purchase options, and keeping in mind that we want to continue to evaluate all options and never lose sight of what options could potentially save the county money and eliminate risk, because that is the charge that Randy put in front of us when we started working on this earlier this year. That would include also continue to evaluate fixed-rate refinancing alternatives and the longer-term direct purchases, which I referred to earlier, in the range of 3 to 7 years. If the county does opt to pursue those, meaning the terms of the direct purchase are not as attractive as maybe a fixed-rate alternative, the county would need to resubmit a plan of refunding to the comptroller's office and allow for their due diligence to review that plan. And we would need to just submit that as a follow-up. As I mentioned earlier, we do expect to hear back from the state, though, by September 19th, which is the county commission meeting date. I will be there in person, not on a screen, so I do exist, and I'll be able to hopefully meet you all. At that point, we'll also be able to provide the draft term sheets that we have received from the banks that we've been working with over the last few weeks. And if we continue down the direct purchase route, our plan is to refinance the E1A bonds and the E5A bonds in the early part of November. And after all of that's said and done, we have now cleaned up the resolution that went in front of the PBA does allow for us in that process, doing the refinancing, to transfer the swaps from the PBA to the county, which will allow Randy and Bond Counsel and PFM to work with your swap counterparties to look at all options that could potentially save the county money in the future in regards to those existing swaps with Deutsche Bank. and we would propose to do that once we have successfully refinanced the E1A bonds and the E5A bonds. So with that, I'm open and I'm here for questions.
Just to remind everyone, I've been asked by different ones on commission as I've briefed folks on this. I've had questions, are we actually paying down our debt? All we're doing with the proposal in front of you is we are reducing the costs associated with our debt. We're not changing any amortization schedules, nor are we paying off any principal any faster or any slower. We're removing the conduit issuer and having a direct relationship with everybody associated with the swaps. And to reemphasize Lauren's point, once that has been effected and all those documents done, we then continue to have the opportunity to look at restructuring our debt if that is a cost benefit to the county. And I also want to emphasize two other points she made, and that is we're not trying to steer ourselves into a corner. This is an option that is a no-brainer in my opinion and very attractive to pursue, but it does not limit us to a 3-year term, nor does it limit us to not pursuing fixing the debt if that is attractive financially. Is that fair, Lauren?
It is fair.
So any other questions? I've got, I'm over halfway through briefing all the commissioners. I've got 4 more tomorrow, and I'll try to have everyone briefed. Everyone's been asked, and I think there's only 2 or 3 that are not scheduled right now, but everyone will have been briefed by the end of this week. Well, you're not eliminating swaps. We're substituting in that last graph she had, we're substituting ourselves for what used to be the PBA, to where we can have direct discussions with Deutsche Bank. So we will need a recommendation that this resolution go to the full commission. And secondly, it is large enough in value if this body made a decision it didn't want to pay any additional issuance costs out of cash, which is my preference, then we could roll that cost into the refinancing if this body chose to do that. So we have the option. Is that correct, Lauren?
That is correct.
Randy, does this save the county money?
Yes.
How much do you estimate it saving?
Well, as of right now, over 3 years, and this is subject to change because we are still negotiating, the hospital and Blount County should save in excess of $2.3 million over the next 3 years.
In administrative costs.
In those ancillary fees that Lauren identified in the football on the graph.
And those are fees that if we stay locked in where we are now, we will be paying.
If we stay with the current structure, then we can reduce the cost of that structure, but it won't be as big a savings as what I just described. And that basically would be in the form of a lower cost of a liquidity facility.
Do I have a motion? Have a motion and a second. Discussion and questions. Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Kirby? Lewis? Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon?
Yes.
Samples? Motion passed.
Thank you.
All right, and then the second item that is before you is a recommendation that I would like to suggest that we pass on to the full commission so that we will have a compatible policy on taxes that would be a companion to our debt policy. And if the commission approves this, then we would post it on our website with our debt policy.
Okay.
I have reviewed it and I have no objection to it.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions?
Lauren, how many of your clients have a tax policy? Would the majority of them, all of them, or?
You know, Randy, I'm not sure I know. I can do a little bit of research and get back to you.
Okay.
But this came from direction from Bass Berry.
Yes, our bond counsel is the one that's recommended this.
Given their reputation across the state, I would say that they probably have a fair amount of their clients that do so. But I'll do a little bit of research from my end as well.
Thank you.
Okay. We ready for a roll call vote?
Kirby? Lewis? Mitchell?
Yes.
Moon?
Yes.
Samples? Motion passed.
Anybody have any other questions for Lauren before we let her go? And again, she will be here on the 19th, as will Mark Mamentov, our bond counsel, on the 19th. Thanks, Lauren.
So,
You move on to item H, finance reports. This is for information only. Item I, input on items not on the agenda. Do I have anyone that would like to have any input on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.